Hi, I'm Jeff Sanders. I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Barty.
Welcome to another episode of A Productive Conversation. Maybe it's your first time joining us. If so, welcome. If not, we're back with another Flashback Friday episode, this time featuring Jeff Sanders. Jeff is the author of a couple of books, but the free time formula is the one that we focus on during this original conversation. But we do have an update from Jeff as well, which talks about what's been going on since he released the book, The Free Time Formula. Spoiler alert. He's had kids since then, so lots has changed. But during the conversation, we talk about the free time formula. We talk about the connection between health and productivity, things that Jeff discovered in having health first productivity approaches in his life, and the productivity system that he follows. That comes during the original conversation that we had. But the update, well, there's lots in there as well for you to enjoy. So without further ado, let's get to that update, which we literally just had a few days ago, actually, between Jeff and myself. Great to catch up with him. And now you get to hear part of that catch-up conversation. So here it is, an update. What's been going on with Jeff Sanders' life? Enjoy. Jeff, thanks once again for joining me and giving me a bit of an update since the last time we spoke, which was many moons ago, to talk about your book, The Free Time Formula. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. The last time we talked was before COVID, before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I basically died and was reborn again. A lot has happened and a lot has not happened, which is also a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm still here, which I feel like is the phrase I tend to use a lot now, which I feel like is a survival phrase, but it's based in truth and then, part of the story. So yeah, I'm still here.
One of the things that I appreciate about talking with folks who have really released one book or two books and not releasing a book every 2 years is this idea of not milking, but working that book consistently year over year over year. Michelle Geelan, who was recently featured on a Flashback Friday episode, I think she's actually the one that's coming up next week. She has stuck with broadcasting happiness to the point where I don't think her website has changed all that much since we last spoke. But have you really been kind of still dialing in and exploring the things you talked about in that book?
What's interesting is that, so the 5 a.m. Miracle book was basically me being intensely productive.
Mm-hmm.
And the free time formula was me like, whoa, Jeff, calm down. Which I feel like is an interesting evolutionary jump that I made.
Yep.
And then for me, the question, basically I wrote that book and then my daughter was born. And then a few years later, my second daughter was born. So my life now as a dad of 2 young girls and running a business and trying to, not have my hair be on fire every day, I am in this interesting phase of life, just turned 40 years old. I kind of hit a milestone there. So then the question is kind of, where am I now in life? And I feel the need to reflect on that and a different take on with a new book that would reflect on that journey, because every season of my life is different. And every perspective shift that I have gives me a nuanced perspective on now where I am it might feel wildly different, but the through line's the same. I still want to be productive. I still want time, to value my time, but the way I value it has to change because my life just isn't the same. And so, I'm trying to run a marathon again.
Yep.
My body is telling me to stop doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It physically is not my 20-year-old self again. So what do I do with that? I have to, nuanced shift of this new Jeff Sanders now.
I wonder, we were talking about nuance before we hit record. Have you found that maybe the 4 years since, because as much as COVID-19 was it from basically 2020, but the ripple effects have continued to this day. Have you found that nuance is something that you've taken time to reflect on more, like the idea of nuance when it comes to how you live your life as opposed to prior to COVID-19, which I think there was a lot, there was a frenetic pace to life that felt not sustainable. And I wonder if I've thought that the pandemic itself, while tragic in so many ways, and everybody was affected differently by it, it almost offered a necessary slowdown or pause to maybe allow people to tap into those values and really think about wait a minute, what am I doing here and what do I really want to do?
I definitely had that reflective period for a long time. What was interesting was that my business was kind of on the upswing when COVID hit, and then it really smashed that to pieces. And so I was forced to rebuild in a number of ways and ask those questions. was that upswing I was having a direction I wanted to go or not? And do I want to pivot and go in a new direction? And so I've done a lot of that, asking that question of, am I where I really should be heading now? And not just reacting to an opportunity that popped up, or someone, has asked me to do a speaking gig. Do I even want to do that? I mean, I am now more reflective to ask the question of, is this a reflection of my best self and my best interests, as opposed to just like, I don't know, let's just go try some stuff, which was where I was for a long time. And that attitude led to me saying yes all the time, which is a great for, experimental lifestyle to try things. But I'm not in that phase right now. I'm in much more of the, let's be intentional and then make the choice that I chose on purpose to go pursue.
It's funny as you brought that up, like, I'll do this. Like, why not? I've got, caution to the wind kind of stuff. Kids change that. Like, that's the thing, I think, right? Like, wouldn't you agree? Like that whole area, because we were talking again before we hit record about how my kids are older now. And now I'm entering that phase or re-entering that phase again of like, yeah, why not? I'll do that. I mean, because the level of responsibility that I have, at least as a parent, has changed. It hasn't diminished, I wouldn't say, but it's definitely changed to the point where my attention doesn't need to be as heightened around that stuff. Whereas you're still in that, like, the guidance phase, there needs to be a heightened level of attention concentration, and rightly so. So do you think that that's definitely played a role in this?
I mean, having kids has changed everything. Like, I can't underplay how important that has been. And in large part because, there's a necessity for me to have a sense of time management that I never had before. I was telling some of this recently where, before I had kids, if I wanted to wake up at 5 a.m. and go for a run and then work on my book or whatever, it's like, okay, no one's going to stop me from doing that. Now there are obstacles, there are real life, boundaries that are in place. And so I have to craft my time around these obstacles in a way that just wasn't true before. But now that it is, the intentionality piece is more baked in than it ever has been. And so I'm really having to make decisions and stick to them, which I've hated and resisted for years, that I'm just now getting used to in a way that is productive. But it took me literally years to adjust to that because I was so used to the sense of autonomy that just is not true anymore in that same way.
So you're going to agree with me now that being a night owl might be better in these situations, because if my kids, when they got up, when they were younger and they were getting up late at night, I could say, go to bed, because it was late at night. Whereas if you're getting up at 5 a.m. to do stuff and they get up at 5:30, saying go to bed is like, well, if they go back to bed, then, first off, good luck. Secondly, so that was one of the benefits about being a night owl is that idea. Are you still up at 5 a.m.? Is 5 a.m. still that miracle for you? Or is it more of a, well, I guess miracles happen less frequently than non-miracles. So is it become truly a miracle if you get that 5 a.m. start time?
So the nuanced answer to this, because that's always nuanced here, is that I have a wife as well. And my wife, Tessa, really values her sleep. And if my alarm goes off too far before hers, it wakes her up and she doesn't want to wake up at 5 a.m. So I have matched her time. So 5:50 is our new wake up time. She has to get our first daughter to school, and then I take our second daughter to her daycare. And so we have different schedules, but we have basically merged them together. So I'll wake up at the same time she does. I'll go do my morning routine. She'll do hers, and then we'll get the girls together. And so there's this sense of like a rhythm and a flow that wasn't true before, but then now is, and it works for us now. But every season is shifting, and with each season we have to reevaluate what's best for all of us now, and then make a decision as a family, not just as a Jeff Sanders loves 5 a.m. Like, that's no longer in the equation. It's like, what are we going to do together?
Well, it's 5 a.m. somewhere, right? I guess that's the way you could look at it.
And it's still productive. I still love early mornings. I still get up and do stuff, but it is a difference in how I approach it.
Right. As we kind of get close to wrapping up here, free time tends to be co-opted when kids show up, right? At least in terms of the idea of the way you would, kind of objectively look at it. Like, free time means you can do whatever you want. So when you think about that, the nuances of free time and the free time formula with kids in the mix now, has it changed all that much, or is it just a redistribution? Like, what does that look like? I mean, you've touched on it a little bit, but when you think about the idea of free time, do you have that much of it? And if you do, like, how do you qualify it or classify it?
So I used to have hobbies that I don't have anymore. That's one of the things that I lost right away. I used to do a lot of woodworking in my garage, and I built all this really cool stuff. And I haven't built anything in 6 years. And I feel this longing to get back and do that. And like, I'm not even that good at woodworking. I just want to do it
Right.
just to say like, hey, it's my time that I get to have now. And so my free time today, typically, I'll end up at the gym working out. I'll go to the park for a hike. I need some like me space just to go like, de-stress and, improve my health. But also like there needs to be some sense of I'm making a choice that's on my own that benefits me. And if I bring the girls along, that's great. But really it's just my free time is going to be squandered by they have birthday parties and they've got all these things to do. And so that's part of it. And I go along with a lot of it and it's fun and it's good. So I have to really identify with this role of I am a dad, I am a husband, and those are absolutely essential parts of who I am. And so the self-centeredness, I guess you could say, of me saying my free time is just for me, that's just not true. And it shouldn't be true because I don't want that to be true.
Right.
So I redefine it and it works out great.
Well, and I think the other thing is if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't expect to take care of others as well as you could, right? And so fitness is an example, or even just that moment of breathing. Like I know for me, when the kids were younger, is just getting, that nighttime was quiet. There was elements of that I got that built in, which was kind of nice because my wife would go to bed early as well. But even, when the kids were home and it was, I was the one home with them for most of the time, my wife, she would sometimes work from home, but most often not at home. Just going for a walk and getting out there in the fresh air and just those moments, because you don't know when they're going to show up necessarily, but you know that you need them, especially when your kids are younger. I just want to be in adult conversations, talking to adults. I just want to do adult things. And it's harder to get those when your kids are younger and finding the time for those things.
Talking to you today has been exactly that. Like I need that kind of, man-to-man time that I don't get. And when I have it, it's wonderful. To the point of, going for a walk, I just recently reintroduced me waking up at 5:50 and going for a walk in my neighborhood. And it's only 20, 30 minutes of walking. And that's just enough for me to like have that sense of I'm going to start the day off intentionally, a little bit of me time, and then I can go back into my home and like let the chaos happen with all the girls, all the chaos. But I'm okay with saying I get little slices of time and those moments are valuable. And when I get them, they work. And it's a new season. It's a new perspective, but I haven't lost myself in this. I've just had to kind of make some concessions here and there, but overall, like I'm still moving this train forward. So we're good.
Well, Jeff, I can't wait to catch up again in the not too distant future. Hopefully not as distant as this catch-up call was, but where can people keep up with what you're doing and keep up with the work that you've got going on right now?
Yeah, so jeffsanders.com is the website. The 5 a.m. Miracle podcast, a great place to go to check out to hear me talking usually every Monday morning. I've got the episodes there. And yes, of course, the 5 a.m. Miracle book, the Free Time Formula book are wonderful as well. But yeah, it'd be great to hang out and see people online whenever I can.
So without further ado, let's get to that conversation, one that I'm sure you may even want to listen to, Jeff, because it's been so long since we did it. Here is our conversation from many years ago, talking about the Free Time Formula. So without further ado, here we go. Jeff Sanders, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Mike.
Really glad to have you here. It's funny because we've crossed paths online, like ships in the night, or maybe in the early morning for you, I guess. But we never actually got a chance to meet in person until, and I mentioned this off the top of the show, until I was in Nashville in late 2017, where we had a chance to connect. And we just, it was good to finally have that connection. And then I found out that you've got the new book that comes out. If you're listening to this, like the day that this episode comes out, then you're also listening to the day that the book comes out, which is called The Free Time Formula: Finding Happiness, Focus, and Productivity No Matter How Busy You Are. So first off, why don't you, for anyone who doesn't know you, but if you're listening to this podcast, you probably dance in the productivity circle, so you have an idea who Jeff is. But Jeff, why don't you dive in and explain a little about who you are, and then talk a little bit about your podcast, and then let's start diving into the book, because I'm really curious about what the Free Time Formula is and how it can help people.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a podcast called The 5 a.m. Miracle, and I have a book by the same title. So my kind of online experience has been based around that brand, which really came from me deciding probably 6 years ago now that I wanted to wake up early to get more done, which is kind of my life story of many years really dancing in the spaces of personal development and blogging and online business. But I never really had kind of my thing that I was like known for, a thing that I wanted to like really talk about and get into, until I decided I wanted to run a marathon. And the best time to train for that was early in the morning. And so I kind of forced myself to become an early morning person. And then I learned so much value from that I decided to just build an entire like podcast and brand around that. So I talk about healthy habits and productivity and ways to wake up and dominate your day before breakfast. And that's kind of my like focus now with my business, is figuring out ways to make the most of your time, which primarily begins by waking up with a plan and really kind of jumpstarting your day with intention. And so that's what I talk about quite a bit, which is just how to make the most out of the time that you have. So that's where my first book came from. It's where my podcast comes from. And I talk a lot of that kind of stuff. And my new book that comes out kind of takes that to the next level. So we can dig into that more now. But really kind of my online story and journey is really all about early mornings.
Now, I want to be clear to people who are listening here. They know that I'm a night owl. They know that I'm not 5 a.m. I am miraculously still in bed, and able to get. So I think that one of the things that I like to stress, and maybe you can speak to this, is that, and I've talked about this with Hal Elrod before too, is that the elements of and you've got this blog post called The 7 Elements of Productivity series, like this whole series of essential elements of productivity, which I'll share in the show notes. You don't, would it be fair to say that if someone really struggled with mornings, that they could take the elements of what you talk about, as when it comes to 5 a.m. start times, that they could apply that to 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. or whatever? Because I think that can be a barrier to entry for a lot of people. They hear 5 a.m. they go, no way, I'm out.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem with my branding, is that's the 5 a.m. part is probably going to disappear in the future, because the answer to your question is that 5 a.m. is totally arbitrary. The advice that I teach is not based on 5 a.m. It's based on intentionality and really saying, like, if I get out of bed at X time, here's my plan for the day. Here's how I'm going to make the most of the time that I have. And so in the book and the podcast, I'd say is all the time, is that it's just, that's not required at all. I think it's great. I think there's a lot of value to early mornings, and there are some advantages to being out of bed before others are out of bed. But other than that, your day is your day, and you can craft it however you want to, as long as it's intentional. I think there's a lot of value to be had with the advice I talk about without it being tied to 5 a.m.
Let's talk about crafting your time, because that's my methodology is called time crafting. You've got the free time formula, and I mean the elements of that would I guess involve crafting your day, right? Making sure that, can you dive into this, the idea of the free time formula? Because people love systems, and when they hear the term free and then they hear a system attached to it, they're like, wait a minute, freedom and systems aren't they incongruent in some ways?
Well, it's a good question. I think that for a long time, I kind of had that same perspective that, my free time would just be things that would just show up randomly. And if I had a free hour out of nowhere, I'd be able to use it in some weird way. In reality, though, what I've learned over the last few years especially is that if you really want to have kind of time to yourself, or free time, or time that's not scheduled, you have to schedule not scheduled time. Like, you have to be intentional about when you're not going to do certain things, and then when you are going to do the things that you haven't had time for in the past. And so the book is really based around this idea that we all have a lot more time than we give ourselves credit for. Yes, we're busy. That's a big part of what the book is about. But really, it's about saying, I have more time than I believe that I do. And with the time I have, here's how I'm going to make the most of it. I think a lot of the problems that I have seen with free time especially is that our free time has already been scheduled with habits. So we already come home from work and just watch TV, or we already kind of have our weekend plans set without realizing it. And so with the intentionality piece built in, you can rethink how your time is spent and replan it, and then do activities that actually replenish you and give you more energy, and then allow you to get more value out of that time that you have when you're not just, on the clock. And so the book really talks about how to make that possible.
Let's talk about this idea of health first. The idea of looking at your health first. I think a lot of people forsake the idea of being healthy or having healthy habits to kind of either kick off their day, or even just peppered throughout their day, so that way they can be truly productive. Because I think that's a lot of people tend to ignore that piece of the puzzle. Where did you first off decide that was the element that you wanted to focus on? I mean, the marathon, I think, definitely plays a huge role in it. But why is that continued to be something that you kind of prophesize and say, like, hey, this is the way you should look at productivity. Let's talk about health first, and then let's get into some of the other elements afterwards.
Well, I think for me, it really did begin with the marathon. That's when I first, it was my mid-20s. I was really getting into, health and fitness and marathoning and trying to figure out how to be kind of just a more fit and athletic person. And it didn't dawn on me until a little later in the process that because I was taking care of myself with such intentionality there, that carried over into my job. I had more energy at the office. I had more enthusiasm for the work that I was doing. I had more creativity to be able to do more fun stuff. And when I saw that connection, that just dawned on me, like, this is the foundation for productivity, is being as healthy as possible. Because I have seen the opposite be true as well, that when I'm exhausted, when I'm burned out, when I'm not feeling healthy, I can't get anything done. And it just is so clear every day that the healthier I am, the more I'm able to then produce, and the quality of the work that I'm producing goes up, the creativity goes up, everything goes up and improves if I'm healthy. And so I take a very hard line approach that health has to be my primary objective, because I know that when that happens, I get the results I want. And so the book definitely addresses this very head on, because it's become more obvious to me as I get older that my health it's more difficult to take care of myself today than it was, let's say, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's even more important now to make that my priority.
We're going to take a bit of a break here but I do want to come back and talk about some of the things specifically that people can do to have more of a health conscious approach to productivity. But we're going to take a break and talk about the sponsor for this week's episode of the show. So stick around. So we're going to take a break from the podcast now to talk about our sponsor for this week's episode.
Is there a solution to BC's opioid crisis? Join leading experts for the latest installment of UBC Okanagan Debates as we explore diverse perspectives on BC's drug emergency. October 29th at the Kelowna Community Theatre. Get your tickets at ok.ubc.ca/debates.
Meal planning is important because it prevents us from being a disappointed wreck when dinner time comes around and we have no clue what to make, or even if we have the ingredients to make the meal. It's a time and a money saver, but most importantly, it frees up valuable brain space. Creating a meal plan prepares us for the week to come and gives us peace of mind that we're organized and can feed ourselves and our family. That's why I do it, and that's why Plan to Eat helps me do it. Your subscription includes access to the Plan to Eat website and fully featured mobile apps on iOS and Android. And Plan to Eat gives you the tools to clip and organize recipes from any website, the ones your family loves and that fit your dietary preferences and needs. And you can create a meal plan around your schedule. Then what happens is the Plan to Eat software automatically creates an organized shopping list based on your plan. So sign up for your free trial at plantoeat.com/timecrafting. That's plantoeat.com/timecrafting. The coupon will be automatically applied to your account and can be used when you're ready to subscribe. It's valid for new customers only. Give Plan to Eat a try today. Health IQ. Now, Health IQ uses science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, strength trainers, vegans, and more. Jeff should be all over this because with his free time formula and the health first conscious approach that he has to productivity, he'd be an ideal candidate. In fact, maybe he should go see if he qualifies. So Jeff and everyone else, to see if you qualify, you can get your free quote today at healthiq.com/Vardy. But there are people who love what Health IQ has to offer. So Jeff's a runner, far more of an elite runner than I am, but so is Ryan Hall. And this is what Ryan had to say about Health IQ. It's perfect because it's made for people like me with a healthy, active lifestyle. Now, the lower heart rates that many pro athletes have can sometimes negatively affect insurance rates, but Ryan liked that Health IQ used his active lifestyle as an asset in getting a good life insurance rate rather than it being a detriment. He also commented that he appreciated how Health IQ made the process easy and simple for him, given how limited his time already is. So let's focus on that time aspect for a second, because that set off alarm bells for me. The fact that Ryan was able to save time because it was easy and simple is something that shouldn't be overlooked, and it definitely shouldn't be undervalued. I mean, I'm a big believer in saving time, and I'm a big believer in having life insurance. I mean, you've got to protect your future. You've got to make sure that you've got this, ready for you in the event that you need it. And Health IQ makes that process easy and simple. I mean, one of the ways you can qualify for up to 33% savings is by taking a Health IQ quiz and scoring elite. Again, to see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/Vardy, or you can mention the promo code Vardy when you talk to a Health IQ agent, and you'll be well on your way. I can't stress enough the importance of being healthy and how that can affect your productivity. Jeff talked about it so far in this episode, and we get into it a little bit more as we proceed, but the fact that Health IQ puts you in the position to leverage your healthy lifestyle, that health conscious lifestyle, and allows you to save on life insurance rates based on your health conscious lifestyle, like a good driver would save on car insurance rates, is phenomenal. So you want to take advantage of this offer now, because life insurance companies, they calculate your policy rates based on your nearest age, not your actual age. And rates increase as you get older. So you want to lock in the best rate possible. So get that free quote today. Head to healthiq.com/Vardy to see if you qualify and get your free quote today. I'd like to thank Health IQ for sponsoring this episode of the Productivityist podcast. And now let's get back to the show. Welcome back. Now, Jeff, people are probably saying this is great, when it comes to this health conscious approach and this health first approach. But can you give some specific ways that people can, without spoiling too much in the book, because obviously the book's going to have some of this in there, but some of the things that you've either discovered yourself or that others have kind of said, hey, I've tried it this way and this has worked, that will allow people to kind of dip their toe in and maybe even fully foster this idea of having a health first approach to productivity?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I realized kind of in the last just couple of years was that I don't have to run marathons to be healthy. I think that for a long time I thought, well, you have to do these extreme behaviors in order to get the results that I wanted.
Thank goodness.
Exactly, right? You take a sigh of relief there, because what I saw was that, yes, when I ran marathons, I was healthier, but I also spent many hours a week working out. Like, it's lots and lots of time. And most people just do not have that kind of time available. And so then my question, even for myself, was as my business was growing and as I was getting busier with work and family and other things I wanted to do, how do I still make time for the health without spending, let's say, 20 hours a week going for a long run? And the answer came down to doing very specific types of workouts that I would get a lot of value from really quickly. There's a variety of ones people could choose from, and there's lots of ways to get healthy quickly. But what I have seen is things like burst training is really effective, which is basically like really high intensity workouts for short time periods. And those tend to have a ton of value in like a 15-minute workout. And if you can do that like 4 days a week, you're going to get so much more value than having done nothing. I think that's what most people tend to do, is they say, well, since I can't run a marathon, I'm not going to work out at all. I'm going to skip all the workouts, which is, of course, not the answer either. So if you find something you can put into your schedule that you enjoy doing and that provides a lot of bang for the buck, that becomes like the highest ROI workout possible, and then you're going to have the growth from there. And so I was, kind of invite someone to start with things you love to do, an activity you already enjoy doing, but do so with some intensity for a short time period and see what that can bring you. Because I always see so much growth when I can, really dig into something. And then burst train's a good idea for that, or sprints, or playing soccer for 30 minutes, like something that really gets you going. But then you can stop and move on, and it's incredible how well that works.
One of the things that you talk about, and I know that this is not exclusive to the book, but it's definitely something that I believe you highlighted in the book, is the idea that you can start today. I think a lot of people, and at this time of year, as we're not only recording this but airing this, people have either struggled with these ideas of New Year's resolutions, or they're feeling like they're already behind in their goals, and guilt shows up. And then, of course, that could be the forebearer for shame. What are some of the things that you discovered along the way when you're building, not only your system, but just in your productivity journey, that said, New Year's doesn't, January 1st doesn't have to be the day I start, nor does my birthday, nor does this. You could just start anytime. And when did you finally say, this is it, I'm going to just start now and build from there? Because I think a lot of people do, they need almost like these waypoints.
Well, I think it's important to address that, because I think for a long time, I was kind of under the impression that, the new year meant like, this is the time to start over. But I think it was sometime in college, I was having this realization that I didn't actually care about January. Like, that didn't matter to me. Like, when the new year came around, like, it was fun to celebrate, but it didn't mean much for me in terms of my goals, because I get inspired for things, whenever I get inspired for them. Like, it happens at random, or whenever I'm really wanting to dig into something. And so I realized a long time ago that I don't like the idea of waiting until January 1st to be inspired. I like to say, okay, where am I today? Whenever that is, and just what can I do to change my life right now? And so I tend to operate my life in shorter time chunks. So I might plan out the next couple of months. But even that for me doesn't work out most of the time because life changes so often. And so I like to think of my life in terms of just the next couple of weeks. Like, what's my most important objective? How can that become my priority? And then how can I change my life to make sure something valuable happens in a short time period so I get that quick win and then can build from there? And I find that that's so much more motivational and so much more, like, it's easier to build from because you get that victory faster and then can grow even faster from there. And so waiting for an arbitrary date can be effective in certain cases, but for the most part, if you want to change your life, I mean, why not start immediately? Like, I don't see a reason to wait. And so if I can begin something today, I'm definitely going to.
And the thing about the free time formula, and there's 7 steps to it, which I would like you to kind of touch on a little bit, is that it doesn't mention, hey, pick a start date. Like, it doesn't say pick a date. That it's like the first step is analyze, which is, I think, part of that process is figuring out, okay, well, when does this make sense? Like, where am I at? Can you walk through these 7 steps, even just in a very cursory way? Because obviously we want people to pick up the book and read the book. There's only so much you can do in a short podcast that would illustrate all the steps. But I like the fact that you've kind of, first off, broken it down. Number 1. Number 2, it's not an acronym. So, I mean, although a 7-letter acronym would be very, very challenging to do. And then thirdly, it's just, I mean, there seems to be some flexibility within it too that allows for people to personalize it. So can you kind of touch on all of those things, as well as mention those 7 steps that people would have to go through to make the free time formula work for them?
Sure. I mean, and you're right with the idea that it's very customizable. There's no set way to do it. And you can skip steps. Like, there's no reason why you'd have to follow it in order. The point of organizing it like that is to make it as approachable as possible, because nobody wants to take on a complicated set of steps. And so I make this as easy as I can. The first step is just to find out what's going on in your life. You analyze yourself with a self-evaluation, possibly a time audit, just some ways to figure out, where am I today? And then once you know that, you can move into the second step, which is to clarify what actually matters to you at this season in your life. And then from there, you have kind of know some priorities. I then dive right into the health first approach. So then it's kind of working on your physical health, your mental health, making sure that you have those as a priority before you get into the work later on. The fourth step is I call cut the nonsense, which really just means analyze all the things in your life and figure out what never has to happen. Those things that we do every day that are silly or useless or not productive, and just cut those. Then we go into the fifth step, which is to actually schedule those things that do matter, the things you want to commit to for this next season. And then we go to a really fun kind of step 6, which is to prevent future nonsense, which is to block distractions, both from yourself and others, because those things definitely throw us off track a lot. And then the final 7th step is to solidify your ideal rhythm. I love the phrase crunch and release. It's one that I heard a long time ago that really is just like, you dig into something, you crunch and kind of do a lot of work, but then you have a release and you step back and analyze it. And so the goal of the last step is to get to that healthy rhythm where you're doing the crunch of the hard, important work, and then you have these breaks built in. You have the free time and a way to really see, like, okay, here's my life now, a bigger picture. I can relax, take a nap, take a break, and then when I'm ready, we'll dig into the next season from there.
So what I love this approach, by the way. There's a lot of real elements that kind of speak to time crafting as well. It's this idea of the fluidity and the flexibility is one. But I want to ask about, and you talk about this in a blog post about the weekly review 2.0, without calling it the weekly review, because that's a David Allen thing. So we're just going to call it, a more, but actually you tell me what it's about. You tell my audience what it's about, because I think that once you go through these 7 steps or whatever, system or framework you're using, is that we often get through all the steps and then we don't, if things kind of fall through the cracks, we don't go back to that analysis or we don't go back to that reflection. So can you talk a little bit about that review or that reflection process that I imagine keeps this whole thing together?
Oh, yeah. For years ago, I discovered David Allen's work and got really excited about that. And that's really built into my first book, The 5 a.m. Miracle. But what I have learned over the years is that if I don't pause to reflect on what's going on, it's so easy to get off track from my original plan. And so it really is kind of doing step 1 over and over and over again, like usually every week or more often than that, to analyze once again, what's going on now? What's going on now? And by asking those kinds of questions, I can figure out where I am in the process of working on a goal. where I am in the middle of the week, what's going on right now, so that I can figure out, okay, these things are now completed. Here are the next things on my plate today, and here are the next few things I want to do coming up. And so that's what I do every week in a formal process. Actually, today is a Friday. I'll do that later on today. That's when I do my reviews, and I look at my whole week and ask those kinds of questions. What did I do well? What did I not do well? And how can I improve for next week? And it's just so powerful to have that built in as a kind of foundational system to make sure that if I want to change my life, I am reflecting on that consistently to make sure that's still taking place.
So as we get close to wrapping up here, there's one thing I want to touch on that we haven't yet. And that's the idea of, you mentioned that you followed Getting Things Done as, and I was an ardent follower as well. And, I don't know, I got a lot of blowback when I started to talk about my own frameworks. When I started to talk about what was called the Now Year method, it was actually initially called the Now Year formula. Then it became the Now Year method. And now it's called time crafting, because for some reason I like to choose things that sounded like something else. And I'm like, no, we need to make it sound so that people can spell it and say it and there's not going to be an issue. But obviously Getting Things Done has played a role in how you've evolved. Why wouldn't you stick with using Getting Things Done? What was the whole point of putting out, what some people might call a whole new system that either has elements or is just a complete departure, or even a partial departure from Getting Things Done? Because I think that's something that a lot of people think about, is why do we need another system? Why do we need another approach? What's the deal behind that? So it may be a tough question or a challenging question, but it's one I get asked, so I figured I might as well throw it your way as well.
Well, it's a great question. I think that the simple answer is that we're all different. And so having even a single system for, a lot of people is very hard to pull off. And I mean, there's no doubt that I love getting things done. There's so much in there that I still use today. It's very valuable. But because we're all different, and it's important to customize whatever system that you have to make it fit yourself. And so kind of what I teach in the 5 a.m. Miracle is different than what I teach in the Free Time Formula, which is all different than David Allen's work as well. But there's elements of all of them kind of mixed together. But I also learned guys like Michael Hyatt and Darren Hardy and other people in the space that have done really important work. And I feel like who I am as a person and what I teach is just kind of a conglomeration of not only what I've learned, but also what I personally experience and then customize for myself every day. So what I teach is kind of like all of that mixed together. What stands out as the most effective, most helpful stuff that's going to really help somebody else move forward, but also be flexible enough that they can customize that for themselves as well, because we all have different lives and different goals. We're in different seasons, but there are some core things that do work for most people. I feel like that's what I lean on, is like what tends to work most of the time and how can I do that over and over again? So my systems are just like all of that mixed together, what stands out as the best of the best, and then that's what I teach.
Thanks to Jeff for joining me, not just when we initially spoke, but also on this Flashback Friday episode to give us an update. You can check out all of the show notes and anything that we talked about, the links, et cetera, at mikevardy.com/podcast568, or wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, even YouTube. And by the way, wherever you get your podcasts is also where you can subscribe to this podcast, which I encourage you to do because it's a way to support the show. That way you won't miss a single episode of what's to come. You can look back in the archives and see other episodes that maybe we haven't flashed back to yet. And also you can check out all of the original episodes that drop every week, including our monthly series, PM Talks. Again, that's one way to support the show. Another way to support the show is to check out the sponsors that you heard during our conversation today. Go to mikevardy.com/podcast sponsors, click on any of the sponsors that resonate with you, and that way they know that we sent you. That's it for this episode of A Productive Conversation. Tune in next time for a shiny new episode. Until then, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.